Welcome to Super Wild Card Weekend. That is not my personal touch. That's what they're calling it, according to you, Gavin. Hope you're right, or I'm going to look pretty lame.
I think I'm right on that one. I think I've seen it all over the commercials, but hope for right.
All right. Well, either way, we got 6 games. What more could you ask for after some slop week 18 to go into 6 good games? I mean, the only game that doesn't have a close spread is the Panthers game. And to be honest, I'm on Panthers money line. So I think all of these games are really good games. JD, which one are you most excited to watch?
Think the one that I'm most excited to see is probably San Francisco, honestly, and Philadelphia, because I just have no idea between those two teams who's going to show up and what's going to happen with all the injuries on San Francisco's side and everything else. It's
Yeah.
going to be interesting, and I think whoever wins that's going to have a lot to say for how like the whole rest of the playoff picture shapes up in the NFC.
Right. That could be one of those spots where it's like whoever gets knocked out, their fans are disappointed that they had a first round elimination. But had they drawn other matchups, they could have gone all the way to the NFC
Yeah,
Championship. So that's always tough. I actually feel that way too on the AFC side with Bills Jags. It kind of feels like that's a brutal
yeah.
draw for both of them. And whoever loses that, hopefully they don't like do something dumb like fire the coaches or something because that's nothing wrong with a first round exit when you get matched up with one of the best teams. This is a fun year, though. I mean, it feels like anyone could win. I hope it's the Texans since we have them at 30-1. But it does feel like it's wide open. That Texans game, I'm really excited to watch because I just think like the Rodgers situation's kind of interesting. But I hope his run comes to an end because we need the Texans to advance. But it's a fun spot. And honestly, it's probably better for Lamar to not just add another playoff loss to his resume because that team was not going anywhere. So I feel like he's too unhealthy still to actually get it done. So probably better to just go ahead and get rid of Hardball, and that might be the best outcome for them rather than just dragging this out more.
I hope for his sake that it's really injury and it's not just like he's kind of getting a little old for that type of quarterback and he's taking too many hits and stuff like that. It'll be interesting to see next year, like how he
Yeah,
really comes out of the gate.
I feel like when players say that it's injury based, it usually means that it's really holding them back. Because I think players don't like to complain about injuries if it's just kind of mild. Like Keyshawn Bude just wrote in that article that came out in the Players Tribune today, which was a really good article about how he battled gambling addiction in college and then the injury that he had took years to actually fully heal. He didn't talk about being injured for those years that it took to fully heal, right? Like he said he wasn't 100% his whole junior year, but like he didn't complain about it. Tons of guys aren't 100%. Tony Pollard probably still isn't 100% right after fracturing his fibula. But you get to a point where it's good enough, you don't complain. The fact that Lamar is saying that he's so hampered by injuries, to me, that means it's probably pretty severe. And you can see it, like he can't even beat at the end to the edge
No.
anymore.
Yeah.
So that you don't go from being like the fastest player in the league to that slow unless something is wrong. So I'm hoping he comes back strong. But anyway, let's talk about the guys who are actually in the playoffs. And let's start at quarterback. You've got it sorted by ownership here. That's fine.
Oh, well, this is what I wanted. There you go,
Okay.
guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There we go. Okay. There's points. Um, yeah. I question these projections a little bit, even though they are my projections. I feel like, you know, as I'm looking at it, I'm like, maybe I went a little too aggressive on the Rams. My thinking was initially that they're the huge favorites. People often like having someone in the first game. There's definitely a tendency of players on these 6 game slates or these multi-day slates, I should say, to stack the first game and then make adjustments based on how it goes. And that's a smart strategy. But if it's overdone, it's overdone, and we should not follow it. My thinking is that the Rams end up pretty chalky because people just view them as such a safe way to start your slate. Like, how can you go wrong playing Puka or Kyron or Stafford when they're 10-point favorites with a huge team total? So I have them pretty chalky. But then as I look at it, I think, well, they don't actually project that well. So didn't edit anything, left it the way I had it. But curious as your stance, JD and Gavin, what do you guys think about the Rams? And are they going to be really chalky, or do you think people want to save their bullets for later games and kind of pass on this first one?
So I think this first game might actually be more ignored, and people will kind of take it from a, hey, let me see what happens there and build the rest of my lineup having that information. If it turns out to be, hey, you know what, the Rams scored a ton of points, let's go off of that. I think that's going to be kind of I think we could kind of see the cards flip over, and it's like, wow, Puka's only 35% owned. I thought he was going to be 55% owned, or something like that could end up happening. Not saying that I expect it, but I think there's more of a chance for that than we give credit, if that makes sense, to end up happening. But I could also see where, people still want to play the Rams and they still love the Rams. And they're, like you said, 10.5-point favorite. How can I go wrong? They're funneled enough that I know exactly where everything's going to be going. It's going to be Puka between the 20s, Devontae in the red zone, Kyren and Corum kind of splitting carries, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And if you look at other teams with studs that you could pay as much for, it's like, okay, the Niners have a 20-point total. The Texans have 21, New England 25, and then you've got the Rams at 29. So that's why I was leaning towards, okay, people are just going to lock in Puka because there aren't even that many studs, right? I mean, if you actually filter the whole slate by salary, you've only got Puka and CMC that are more than 7.4K, and you've only got like 3 more guys that are even above 7K, and then it just really drops off to a bunch of 6K, 5K. So if you like some values, I feel like people are going to find themselves with the money to play Puka, and he just feels like such a high floor option. It's like, how could you go wrong? I just worry Puka ends up really chalky. And so then I thought, well, then maybe Stafford ends up getting paired with him a decent amount. But it's a tough spot to predict.
Yeah, my thought is on it too is the MVP race is over. So I think people have this idea of who Stafford is this year and what they've been doing. And so I'm kind of wondering, like, do we just avoid that pass game altogether and actually lean into the running backs because they go back to being a run-heavy team now that we're in the playoffs?
I was going to say, they have such a good run game. I mean, their line yards, like adjusted line yards, they're so good. It does feel like this could just be a really boring game where they're just running it a ton. So, yeah, my tendency is to fade the whole Rams passing side. And then on the running back side, I have Kyren projected pretty chalky, but Blake Corum is taking like half the work. So it kind of just makes me want to fade the whole thing, especially because I think the Panthers play better than the market believes. So in that first game, I'm tempted to either like one off a Panther or just fade the whole thing, like you said, and then just keep flexibility.
And something that we have to keep an eye on too the next couple of days is it could be a slop fest, like actual downpour. We're not quite sure what the weather's going to look like yet, but they're saying that the rain could be pretty heavy to the point that it actually saturates the field pretty heavily. So that'll be something
with
we want to keep an eye on too. Yeah, with wind.
Yeah, could be a really gross game. A lot of the games have some weather concerns to keep an eye on. Gavin, what's your thought on that first game? Do you have anybody that you like in that game or
To me, I wanted to touch on the running back situation that you were talking about there with Corum and Williams, because Williams was obviously the RB1 all year. He's the workhorse, and it turned into a thing where Sean McVay was saying that he wanted to be able to keep Kyren fresh for the playoffs, and I'm very curious as to how much work Corum gets now that it is the playoff time, because
that's fair.
Corum went out and he balled whenever he was given the ball, he made himself that he needed to get the ball again. So I'm curious as to how much work Corum actually does get versus how much work Williams gets in this one.
Yeah, I think JD, can you put up the running back projections? I think on this pod, I think we'll just bounce around, right? Because we're going to kind of go into different games. So if you look at the running back projections, I actually do have it that way, Gav. I have it. If you scroll down, you'll see Corum is pretty far down. I have Kyren with like 65-70% of the work. So that's why he projects pretty well. But I just since I think most people have it projected that way, and I just think there is a possibility that it's more even than we expect. So I don't know, and I just think there's a chance the Panthers play better or the game's pretty low scoring. I'm kind of leaning towards a fade of that one, but I don't think I would play Kyren though. I mean, I don't think I'd play Corum. I think it's too risky to play Corum. You are asking for barely any work, and then he gets you like 5 points, and you're just like, well, why did I do this? Because there's tons of good running backs on the slate. So many. So,
Well,
yeah, I
and
don't.
look at his price, and like Dowdle's 100 more, Mark's 200
Right.
more, Gainwell's
Exactly.
500
It would
more.
be pretty insane to play Corum here.
Yeah.
Especially because like we're lower on the Rams than the market. If we thought the Rams were going to win by 20, then you say, well, maybe Corum's in play, right? But I don't think in the game we're projecting, it doesn't really make sense. Okay, so can you go to receivers? I just want the viewers to be able to like visualize how much more Puka projects for than everyone else. So he projects 5 points better than AJ Brown, who's the second highest receiver, 58% ownership. And again, like I said, I mean, if you look at guys like Parker Washington and Christian Watson at 5K, they project great. So I could see a lot of lineups where people are like, all right, I've got lots of salary. I've got some mid-range running backs. I've got these 5K receivers. I can afford Puka, no problem. So I think if forced to choose between Puka and McCaffrey, more people will feel comfortable playing Puka. And that's kind of where and even if you play McCaffrey, you could still kind of afford Puka, right? Like you could jam them both, maybe go 2 cheap tight ends. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to build here. Let's stay at wide receiver for a second. And I want to mention Christian Watson. I think he's my favorite play. And he's just become the alpha in Green Bay. And we just, JD, I mean, you and I have been writing him up week after week as one of the best plays on every slate that he's on. His role has just like really taken off. And I think people are maybe it's quick to forget like how many injuries Christian Watson has battled over the years. And the fact that he finally seems healthy and is playing, a pretty full workload, I like him even though he's pretty chalky. But curious to get your guys' thoughts because he's only had 4 to 6 targets over the last 4 games. He has not exceeded 6 targets. So it does like I was coming into the slate thinking, okay, I'm definitely going to play this guy. But the fact that he's chalky, like the floor is low on a deep threat who maybe gets 5 or 6 targets. What if they're mostly incomplete? I mean, he could put up like a 2-catch game for 40 yards, and that's not going to help you. So that's a guy I was really curious to get your thoughts on.
All right. So here's where I am at with that. We ready to puke 12 minutes and 52 seconds into the podcast already. When DK Metcalf is only $500 more and half the projected ownership, the kind of role that he has, like we just kind of saw how that pass offense falls apart when he's not out there. And they need him, and they kind of were getting into that rhythm the last 2 or 3 games before he got suspended as well. That it felt like him and Rodgers were finally on the same page. They were getting together a lot more in the red zone. I just think when 4,900, like sometimes 4,900 to 5,400 in salary is huge. Like that $500 is going to be big on some slates, but this one, like you said, the price is pretty loose. So I think the pricing is loose enough that Watson, because I was with you, I was like, yeah, Watson will be a great salary saver. And then you see like, 33%. I was kind of hoping that'd be like 10% less than it is. Like that's a lot of ownership coming in on someone that can have, 3 catches for 40 yards or something like that. So I think it's one of those things where I have him and Washington that are kind of in that same price range that are at less ownership. Washington a little less so as far as ownership. He's kind of become the alpha in Jacksonville in a really explosive offense. And that's not nothing either. Yeah. So I think I don't want to play Watson.
I know
just because
that situation has been really bizarre. I will say this about both Watson and Washington. Both of them are far outperforming their expected fantasy points over the last 4 weeks. Washington is averaging 5 points more than his expected, and Watson is averaging 3 points more than his expected. So definitely some of that ownership just comes from running good. I mean, just converting on end zone targets. And there's merit to pivoting off of the chalk. And I think that DK Metcalf is actually a really good pivot. That whole Pittsburgh-Houston game feels under-owned to me. I know it's the lowest total, and that's why people aren't really high on it, but none of these totals are crazy high. I mean, Jacksonville, Buffalo, definitely the highest, but Houston and Pitt have like 21-point total for Houston, 18 for Pitt. that's the lowest, game on the slate, but it's only a point or two, right? So I
Yeah,
feel like
not
if you can
much.
get these really funneled offenses, like, Woody Marks and Metcalf are the ones that really stand out to me there. And Stroud is pretty low owned too. I mean, if you look at the quarterback ownership, he kind of stands out as one of the lower owned guys. Any other, Gavin? What other receivers do stand out to you? I mean, you can see here Nico Collins projects lower owned than the other studs. Uh, who else is kind of got your attention at wide receiver?
Yeah, I know it's right below Nico Collins. It's Devonte Adams. I had him on my fantasy team this year, and he was the best player all season long. And if you're wanting to lean the way of going with Stafford, I personally think that you have a better shot of hitting with Devonte, snagging one or two of the touchdowns from Puka, and hopefully Puka goes the other way. And that's your big fade of the week is, in my eyes, is hopefully Devonte takes those touches away from Puka.
I definitely prefer Adams to Puka. I agree. If you're going to play one of them, we've been on that train all year long. When Adams is on the field, he's the one that gets those goal line looks. And when Adams was out, they just started running those plays for Puka. And the announcers would even say, that's usually an Adams play, but, now that he's out, here, we'll give it to Puka. So I think now Puka's probably over projected. Like, I think people are just like thinking that he's so safe. You have to remember that before Adams went out, Puka was really struggling. I mean, he was not hitting value at his current price. Weeks like 15, 11, when Adams was just dominating the red zone targets, Puka was really struggling. I mean, I think he put up like 5 games in a row of 10 to 15 points. So it's not like he's just this automatic smash like we see with like a Jamar Chase. Like, I think people consider Puka the best fantasy receiver. And don't get me wrong, I took him 1.1 in the playoff best ball, mainly because the Rams are projected to go so far. He's a good play, but at over 50% ownership and that salary, I'd rather have Devontae Adams. I agree.
Yeah, the thing with Adams that I'm gonna have to get over personally, just kind of a personal bias, is I was loving him during the year when it was like Puka's 35% owned and Devontae's 5% owned. Like there was such a huge, massive ownership difference between the two as well. And so when I came in and saw that they're 2 of the 3 highest owned projected receivers on the entire slate, it's just kind of in my bones to be like, ooh, I don't know that I really want to take someone that high owned. But the thing about Adams we have to remember too is I don't think they're just going to stop throwing to him in the red zone. Everywhere he's ever been, every quarterback he's ever played with, like he just gets targeted in the red zone over and over and over because he's so good at it. So I think that's still going to be a role that he plays. Yeah, it's still going to be something that he gets. Even if it's a sloppy game, they can, run their way down into the red zone or whatever, and then run those 0 to 5 yard routes that Adams runs so well in the end zone and still throw it to him and put it up there for him. So yeah, I think that he does definitely still have merit on this slate. And that's one of those things where I have to get over the sticker shock of looking at how much the ownership is and just kind of think of it in a vacuum of, well, if I don't end up playing Puka or if I want of him and I'm just like, this is the one play I'm playing on this offense, like, it's not such a bad spot to have him compared to the rest of the Rams and the ownership they're getting.
Yeah. I mean, I think that ownership could come down, right? Like if we think that more people decide to take a wait and see approach on the slate, if the weather keeps getting worse, then I think you'll see way more people just get off of it. And the weather shouldn't impact Adams too much because his main value is running like a 2-yard zig route.
Exactly.
So I'm not too worried about it. It's just, yeah, if you want to fade the game, then it's hard to play a guy who's so touchdown reliant. Like if you're fading Stafford, but if Stafford's not that chalky, then it's not a big deal. And he could throw for 2 touchdowns to Adams, and it doesn't mean that he's optimal at his price. So maybe we should hop back over to quarterback and talk about some of the QBs that we like playing the most, and then we can kind of build some stacks from there. Josh Allen definitely stands out to me as like that game has the highest total, and he's the best quarterback by far for fantasy. So he kind of was someone I initially thought I'd be interested in, and then seeing the ownership not being that crazy, I was like, all right, I'm definitely interested in Allen. And then I even ran some like optimizer lineups on various sites, and it's giving me Jalen Hurts instead of Josh Allen. So I really like Allen if that's the case, right? Like if especially in like higher stakes fields, if Hurts is the guy that people are thinking is the optimal QB, then I would definitely rather have Allen.
Yeah, I think if you're going between those two, that honestly would be my tiebreaker this week because they both are in pretty good spots. Hurts is a little more scary just because that offense can disappear for halves at a time where they just don't do anything sometimes.
Right.
But yeah, he's definitely in optimizers more than Allen. I definitely love Allen more than that, especially because Allen's so easy to play just him and not even another Buffalo player on your team, and just have 2 or 3 Jacksonville guys or whatever, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
So
I know, and I
need.
think that's why Allen doesn't get the ownership he deserves, because if you're looking at building a Jalen Hurts stack, you know exactly who he's going to – if Jalen Hurts goes off, you will get the benefit of multiple players on your team going off. So Jalen Hurts is better from the sense of like, if I view him and Allen as a similar chance of having a big game, I know Hurts is going to carry 2 or 3 other players on my roster to a good game as well. It'll be A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, or Goddard. If I play 2 of those 3, I probably hit it. If you play Allen, I mean, good luck trying to figure out who to pair him with, which is why I would just pair him with nobody. I'm not taking my chances on Dalton Kincaid, most likely, or Khalil Shakir. I'm probably just playing him by himself. And then the thing that makes that kind of build fun is that now you get to just take up all your favorite one-offs, right? You can just take your favorite options at every position, and you don't have to build out a stack. Whereas if you play Hurts, it's like, all right, your tight end spot's taken by Goddard now. A.J. Brown's your wide receiver 1. So it kind of fills out your lineup for you. Maybe you want that, maybe you don't. But I lean the Allen side because I think that people are really – the market has really shifted towards Philly. They've become bigger favorites. The total is climbing. I know the Niners are dealing with some injuries, but it feels like the market's really, bowled up on the Eagles. So I'd rather go with Allen. Gavin, you're a Broncos fan, so you shouldn't be biased here. What do you think of Allen versus Hurts and building out those stacks?
Yeah, I had Allen highlighted as the guy that I wanted to talk about. Just in the sense of it's the highest game total coming into it. And, you'd love to have a piece of that offense, but looking at the rest of the pass catchers on that team, I want nothing to do with them. And being able to get the guy that is either throwing or running the touchdowns in, I'd love to get Josh Allen there. And like you said, kind of pick and choose who else you want to add with him, but staying away from the rest of that Bills offense.
Yeah, I love it. I think Naked Allen is my favorite option at QB. I think my next favorite option is probably Justin Herbert, just because he has so much rushing upside, and I just don't feel like the market gives him credit for that. I think like they have the worst line in football, and like literally 32nd ranked offensive line, and yet Herbert has found a way to take this team to the playoffs by just simply being so good. And so to see his ownership that low is pretty surprising to me. I think part of it is that he's impossible to stack as well, right? Like you've got 4 guys who all project for basically 40 yards. I think the prop on Allen, Gadsden, QJ, and McConkey is all between 39.5 and 49.5. So what do you make of that? I think that's why his ownership's so low. But again, the rushing upside's there, and the offense is spread out enough that he could hit as a naked quarterback. You could even just throw in like a Gadsden because there's no obvious tight end play. I think that you could just toss in somebody like Gadsden. But anyway, I think Herbert's really interesting.
Yeah, I think Herbert's interesting on his own for that. To give people an idea of what he's done the last 4 games too, rushing 10 rushes for 66 yards, 8 rushes for 42 yards and a touchdown, 6 rushes for 37 yards, and then 2 rushes for 0 yards. But that was against the Kansas City Chiefs without anybody, so that doesn't count. But those games that actually mattered and that he had to, he was actually taking off quite a bit, using his legs, finding that as well. And I kind of like the idea of stacking him with somebody because it kind of comes back to one of the core principles of DFS I try to play, which is, okay, if this is right, how high up the leaderboard is this shooting me? So with low owned as Herbert already is, plus his pass catchers that don't project very well because they just kind of cannibalize each other in everyone's mind. If I happen to get the one guy, if I get the QJ, if I get the Gadsden that catches 80 yards and a touchdown, like how far are those two going to vault me ahead of everybody else? Because not only do I have the quarterback nobody has, I also got his pass catcher that he brought along with him. And so I'm going to have those two people together. And that's why, you know, we'll kind of go into it in a second, but another one of my favorite quarterback plays is the way that he is, because it's kind of the same idea of like, when I get this right, it's going to get me really, really high on the leaderboards, and it's going to put me in contention for first place instead of just being like, oh, I got it right along with 40% of the field, so now the rest of my roster has to be perfect too.
Yeah, no, I think, can you put up the Chargers flex plays on the screen for people? I think it's worth pointing out. So over the last 5 weeks after their bye, they've really used these four guys pretty equally, and the results have not been equal. Like QJ leads by far. He has 12.3 points per game. Gadsden is the lowest at 6, but the expected points per game is all within 2 of each other. Gadsden's the lowest at 7.4. McConkey's actually the highest at 9.4. QJ is just really overperforming. He's hauling in all of his red zone targets for touchdowns, and he's hauled in some real deep passes. And part of that is that Herbert's really good and he's throwing an accurate ball, but other guys aren't getting as lucky. So I think that there's I think if you had to pick one, to me it's Gadsden because he's just priced so much lower. And then if I had to take a receiver, it's Keenan Allen because Allen's expected fantasy points is right there with QJ and McConkey. And I feel like in the playoffs, doesn't it just feel like that's when and maybe this is a fishy thing to say, but doesn't it just feel like that's when Keenan Allen would like step up more? I mean, I would imagine that's when Keenan gets extra targets is in the playoffs.
That's kind of what these older guys are waiting for, right? Like Gavin brought up the Kyren Williams situation too, of like, hey, the reason he backed off this year is so he can actually do what he's used to, but also in the playoffs. So I think that's kind of a generally sharp take to have honestly. Like it's kind of like that's when these guys are really saving themselves for. At this point, they're not trying to stay healthy for much. It's, you know, win or go home. So this is when they're going to really be out there. And this is when you might expect Allen to, I kind of expect them to, they've been putting in a lot of Trey Harris down the stretch and playing him a lot of snaps. I think this is where he just gets cut out and those other three guys just eat them all up. Those are the three wide receivers that play the three wide receiver sets. And it's just those three. So they all get to see a little bit more of a snap share than they have coming down the stretch.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because week 18, they don't even play Herbert. And Keenan Allen goes out there and has 13 targets. Like you think like, oh, okay, a game that doesn't matter. That's when Allen would be as uninvolved as possible. And then he has his season high in targets. So kind of odd.
There was a reason for that.
Yeah,
he kept saying publicly. He kept reminding Trey Lance that he needed
that's
for,
true. That's true.
His,
that's a good point. That's a good point.
He did get it on his target. He caught his.
That's a good point. Okay, so that was just purely incentive based. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, well, yeah, because like his role hasn't been exciting lately, but his targets actually like. They're down, but they're not like crazy down. Like I think people assume that he's really fallen off a cliff because they aren't using him anymore, but he's still playing a similar number of snaps and has almost the same number of targets. He just hasn't gotten in the end zone. He started the season scoring in the first 3 games, and he only has 1 touchdown since. I think there's some bad variance there, and like, yeah, I think in the playoffs, it makes sense that's when he would be used. And the reality is I just don't want to pay $5,000 for QJ and McConkey when they're averaging 9 expected fantasy points a game. So I'm willing to pay that for Allen and Gadsden, pay their price. But yeah, not for the other guys.
The reason I'd be willing to with QJ is just he is getting the usage in the red zone more. So, I mean, he does happen to have the higher chance, I feel like, to catch a touchdown since he's getting that a little bit more. Gadsden's still better than all of them. But, you know, I think those two would be the reason I look at those two because Gadsden, because of the position he plays, like you said, there's no tight end that really jumps off the screen this week. So
Yeah, do you want to go to tight end next? Because we've now said that a few times. Maybe we should like show everybody what the tight end scene is, because it's pretty ugly. I mean, Colton Loveland has been balling.
Oh, we just lost Justin again.
I think we did just lose
Oh,
Justin.
are we back?
he's
Am I back?
He's back. Yep.
Okay, sorry
He's
about
still
that.
back.
Yeah, all of a sudden you guys started swirling, and I was like, oh no. Okay, so I think Loveland has come on really strong, but I feel like he might be a little too popular for the fact that he doesn't project that much better than anybody else. Brenton Strange is probably the most appealing to me because I think his role has really improved. Similar to Loveland, his role has really come on strong, but it feels like the market isn't that interested in him. So I think he's kind of my favorite, just one-off tight end, regardless of who your quarterback is. But if I'm playing Herbert, then I think it's Gadsden.
Yeah, I kind of my love for Loveland, no pun intended, like has not been shy the last couple of weeks. He's part of the reason he's so high in our playoff best ball rankings is because of me. I'm the one that was championing him and stuff. But him and Burden
he's
have
been awesome.
Yeah, they have been the offense there, but yeah, kind of the sticker shock we talked about of Adams earlier. I kind of had that on his ownership. Like, oh, dang it. I was hoping that just be kind of a mixed in with the Kittles and the Goddards and the Henrys. And I was kind of hoping Kittle would be quite a bit more owned, but I think people realize that price is a little too much compared to the rest of the field this week. So I don't know. He might deserve that price in a vacuum, but I'm not sure on this kind of slate with where they priced everyone else that we really needed him to be $1,500 more than the next tight end.
Yeah, I know his price is like pretty prohibitive, but he also has a massive ceiling. So it's and it's not a slate where if you're not going to play Puka, then it's you're almost certainly playing CMC, and you still probably could afford Kittle. So yeah, there's a path where I could play Kittle, but it's so hard not to want to use one of these guys. Between 3.5 and 4.5K, you've just got so many good options.
Yeah.
Gavin, who are you liking most at tight end this week?
I'm the lower side of it. I think that Dallas Goedert here is a great spot to get a guy that is an elite tight end, but is not outrageously priced like Kittle is. And I think that does pair perfectly if you do believe in how am I blanking on his name right now? Jalen Hurts. Yeah, I have no idea where that name.
Yeah.
I kept wanting to say AJ Brown. If you want to stack with Jalen Hurts, I think Dallas Goedert's a great place to go.
Yeah, I agree. I think Goedert with his red zone role pairs really well with Hurts. I mean, he's been scoring touchdowns at will lately, and my only fear on Goedert is that a lot of his touchdowns have come from just really bad defense, and they've drawn up some really good plays in the red zone to confuse shitty defenses. I think against the Raiders, they ran the
Are we spinning again?
open 3 or 4 yard. Oh, am I out again?
Oh, you're back. You're back, I think. Oh, maybe not. I thought he was coming back, but now he's gone again.
Yeah, it looked like he was there for a second.
Oh. But yeah, and I do kind of like what he was saying as far as what they were drawn up to take advantage of people too. My counterpoint to that though would be like, what about San Francisco's defense has us thinking they're a good defense? Like they're just not something that I'm really worried about going against, or even scheme wise, they're not great. So I think you might be back. Oh, I saw him moving for a second.
What does excite me about Goedert is he's getting 31% on the season of the red zone targets. And I think that's a number that you cannot ignore.
Yeah, like I feel like he's almost been, the tush push hasn't been near as big for them, especially coming down the stretch. And it seems like at the beginning of the year, they were kind of doing that little, I don't know what you call it, the little flip pass thing to him or something like that was kind of out there as well. Like they've been drawing a lot more plays up for him. So he's someone that with his red zone role, I think he could be a really good play as well.
Yeah.
Another guy that I've been looking at too is Dalton Schultz has been really strong for Houston recently too. I know that we've had Higgins starting to break out and be better in his role with them, and he's been starting to take on stuff, but Schultz has been really involved as well too. He still has, a 20% target share. He's still out targeting Higgins coming down the stretch, starting to get into the range where Collins is as well. And he's also been the big guy in the red zone. He's had 7 red zone targets down there, caught a couple of touchdown passes, but he's someone that's kind of become the safety blanket for Stroud. And I really like him. And I think this could be a place that he's a lot less popular than I thought he would be, kind of looking at the first set of projections. I think that he's in a spot that I like against that Pittsburgh defense that I think it's a lot of respect in name that isn't actually as strong this year.
Yeah, no, I like that too. I was going to ask you, leaning either way on Higbee or Parkinson, or any thoughts on that situation?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I was actually kind of a little bit surprised that with Higbee and Parkinson, I thought that the ownership might still be flipped, but I think people have seen what Higbee's role's been like, and he's kind of taken that back over. I do really like him being cheaper here. I kind of was hoping that he would still be the more expensive one. So I think that's a big part of it as well. But I do think that Higbee's role has been really good coming in. But I think that they'll be missing I can't think of his name all of a sudden, that's been having the hamstring issue that's looking like he's not going to play, that's been really good for him. Terrence Ferguson, the rookie, couldn't think of his name. Looks like Ferguson's not going to play. So I think there's actually room to play both of them. So I think they both will have roles still, and that Higbee will fit into his role, but Parkinson will have kind of that more downfield, explosive role that Ferguson was having, and that's going to be something to look out for, and that's something that he could fit in there. So I don't think I like playing both tight ends together in that offense, but in general, I think they both are playable, and they're both guys that you could plug in. Did you have thoughts on that one?
No, I honestly didn't know where to go with it. I was wondering which side you were leaning, just because it seems, looking back in the past 4 or 5 weeks when everyone's been healthy, that Rams tight end position has been so hard to nail down.
Yeah, no, it really has. Have you had any thoughts? I think Justin's back with us now. Have you had any thoughts as far as Rams tight end, Justin? One way or the other?
Yeah, sorry guys. I switched to a mobile hotspot. This coffee shop usually is good to me, but today it has really failed me. So sorry about that. I Rams tight ends, I lean Higbee because I feel like historically we've seen Stafford in big games really lean on Higbee. And last week it felt like they were really trying to work him back in. And they had some interesting action for him that I thought looks like something they're kind of working on to utilize him. So, I mean, Parkinson was still pretty involved. It's a tough spot to try to get right. But all in all, I mean, Higbee had 5 catches, 91 yards, and a touchdown in his first game back in 2 months. So that, to me, is really bullish. He played 64% of snaps. And Ferguson's questionable. I think you mentioned that. But yeah, I think I'd go Higbee, but it's hard to play any of them. Yeah, I do remember where I was when my internet dropped, which was talking about Goddard. I don't want to forget to circle back to that. So that Raiders game where he had 2 touchdowns, he actually should have had 3. He dropped one of them, and they ran the same exact play 3 times from inside the 5-yard line, and the Raiders fell for it every single time. And Goddard was wide open every time. So I think they just saw something on film where I think it was that the linebacker, whatever formation they were running at the goal line, they knew the linebacker would just let the tight end go. And so they just kept running it, and he would just let him go every time, and Goddard was just wide open every time. So part of me is like, all right, just completely throw those out. Like they just saw something on film. They just beat it into the ground. The Eagles are historically good at that. I mean, think about like the Super Bowl where they beat the Chiefs. It was the same thing, right? Like they're just running the same thing over and over again. They're good at that, where if they find something that works, they trust that the defender is not going to learn his lesson in mid-game, right? Like if that's his natural way of reacting to seeing something, he can't fix that just because he gets burned once. So let's just do it over and over. And that can be awesome, but I do feel a little bit like some of Goddard's stats are a little inflated because then I also think they caught Washington with also making mistakes. And these are bad defenses, like very bad defenses, right? And so he had some pretty good results against some bad teams. But when he played Buffalo, he had 8 yards. Against Chicago, he had 27 yards. And then you've got these really bad defenses in between. So I don't know. I like Goddard okay. I think that he has really high upside. If they see something that works with a tight end, they will put Goddard in that action. But there's also games where they just don't use him at all. So he feels like a high upside GBP guy, but like a kind of a low floor option to me.
Yeah, the one argument I was making, the one Gavin brought up, what was the percentage that you found that how much is
he's getting
red zone?
31% on the season of red zone targets.
Yeah, so I mean his role's still there for sure to be able to do that. And my argument was, are we sure San Francisco's defense is any better than the Raiders' defense? Like, at this
they
point,
might not be. Yeah, no, they might not be, and they may find a way to exploit them in the red zone, and it's Goddard that usually is the beneficiary. So I like that. I just have to make the case for Brenton Strange because he's just playing so well. I mean, the last few games of the season, the last 3 games, he had 14 catches, 145 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's really jumped right back in. Like early in the season, I thought this guy's going to have a really big year. Then he gets hurt and, misses a few months. But he's come right back into having, 6 targets a game and putting up about 50 yards a game. So at his price, I think he's the cash play. Like, I think he's got the best floor. And he's not that chalky, so he's really nice in GBPs as well. So, yeah, I mean, you can see he's the top point per dollar play with Goddard, but I lean towards Strange personally.
I kind of like the Jacksonville pass game in general because they've been blowing teams out so much. I think it's actually been because they've actually been the 8th highest team in pass rate over expectation the last 6 weeks. But because they've been blowing teams out, it hasn't been like a huge volume. It's been like 31 or 33 passes. So
the upside for the pass game just doesn't really come to fruition because they just kill everyone.
Yeah, but this is a game where I think Buffalo could probably stick with them. And if they do run it up a little bit, Buffalo can kind of come back with Allen and do that as well. So I think there's a lot of upside for the pass game there because I think Lawrence could get into the high 30s, low 40s in pass attempts here because they have found that approach worked really well for them. And so if that's something that they can have a chance to lead into it a little bit more, they're going to go ahead and let him throw that much because they have actually shown a lot more trust than you realize in him just because the overall attempts are not high.
I agree. I don't think they could be much more confident in Trevor Lawrence right now. It feels like they totally believe in him. They're running the full playbook. Liam Cohen's got it all opened up now, right? Like they really, over the last few months, they've really come into being like one of the best teams. I have the most exposure to the Jags by far in playoff best ball. I bet you do too, JD, because they're a really good offense. And Jacoby Myers kind of became like the clear wide receiver 1 as the season kind of was winding down, although Parker Washington has stepped into challenging him on that. But I think people view the Jags offense as like too spread out. But I actually think you could go with like Myers, Parker, and Strange and get most of the passing volume. So would you rather play Allen on the other side, or would you rather just play Lawrence and maybe use James Cook?
I think both are really, really viable. We haven't really talked much about running back yet. Let's go there.
Yeah, let's go over to running back. Yeah.
But Cook is kind of up there along with Saquon as being the next challenger to CMC as far as overall points. I just feel like Cook is the only guy I look at when we see that next range of running backs that I'm kind of like, I feel like his ceiling rivals CMC sometimes. I think the place he doesn't have him is he's not as consistent, but he can have
his floor is actually quite disgusting.
Yeah.
But if we're chasing ceilings and GBPs, James Cook puts together some epic runs.
Yeah.
And I mean, we just saw against Philly in week 17, he got the ball 21 times and he put up 8 fantasy points. So he's definitely capable of killing you. But the weeks before that, he had 25 and 30. So, yeah, he can give you some monster games. And with the total this high, I mean, Vegas is telling us this should be a shootout. And I feel like in a shootout, James Cook gets there. And it just – I will say, though, last year I fell into the trap of thinking, okay, in the playoffs, they're just going to really lean on James Cook. And it ended up being more Ray Davis than ever. and more Ty Johnson than ever. So it was kind of bizarre.
Yeah, but they also didn't really use Cook at all last week. I think that was a good indicator of how much they've leaned on him this year already and how much they plan to continue to do that. Because I think he had 3 touches last week. What he ended up with 2 touches is what he ended up with last week against the Jets. They didn't really play him very much, just the one drive. So I think that kind of is an indicator with as little as him and Allen played, just how much they're looking to lean on them come the playoffs.
Yeah, that's fair. I remember last year being disappointed at James Cook's playoff performances. But as I'm looking at it now, I mean, he still had the bulk of the carries. He was getting out-snapped by Ty Johnson, but he was still or close. But he still was getting 17 to 25 carries.
Oh,
And if he gets that many carries against Jacksonville, you got to figure he gives you a pretty good game most of the time. So yeah, I think with the ownership on that game just doesn't feel like it's high enough for the likelihood that that's the one shootout of the week.
Yeah, I was about to say, this is smelling like is the good old fashioned overstack for a 6-game slate. Like if I were to overstack a game this week, that would probably be the one that I'd be looking at to do that on.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah, I think that one's really fun. If we go back to quarterback, Trevor Lawrence is just not he's just not expected to be all that popular.
No.
I mean, 14% ownership. Yeah, I mean, on an offense that has been really pass heavy when they are in a neutral script, yeah, it's hard not to play Trevor Lawrence. And now he's got grills. I mean, this guy he's dripping swag. Yeah, he's tough not to play. I originally thought I was going to play Josh Allen, but now after this whole conversation, I'm kind of leaning towards James Cook and doing the whole Trevor Lawrence stack, because if they go really pass heavy and he's not that high owned and he has rushing upside, yeah, it's hard not to play him.
Yeah, I think those are my 2 favorite. That game in general, just with those 2 being there is kind of it. I think those are the 2 that I'm really looking forward to playing at quarterback. I'll probably end up with a third one. I don't know who it is yet, but yeah, those will be the 2 that I definitely look most heavy at. Like I think I'm willing to lean into this game, whether you're playing I think they're on the Sunday game, right? So they'd be on the 3-game slate or the overall 6-game main slate. Like I think both of them, I'd like to play a lot of players from that team.
Yeah. I mean, Lawrence is putting up massive scores. Like last 7 games, he's giving you 20 plus most of the time. And, he's throwing for at least 2 touchdowns or running them in. Yeah, he's doing it all. I still like Justin Herbert's rushing upside more, but the passing upside for Lawrence is massive. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if he threw for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. The only, before we kind of go away from quarterback completely as well, the only other one that I'm kind of looking at that I wondered how you guys felt was, and I think it's because of how hard he is to stack. We talk about that all year. Is I kind of like Drake May when nobody else is looking to play him, and I kind of like him in the same vein that we were talking about playing Herbert in, where it's like, okay, you just stack him with Gadsden or you stack him with Allen or something like that, and if you hit the one pass catcher you need, it's going to vault you so far ahead. I think May and Diggs is a lot of that too, because Diggs is not cheap on this slate. Like he's not super expensive, but he's not cheap. But I also think they've managed him so much throughout the year that he's kind of had these huge games and then nothing, and huge games and then nothing. I think he fits that same role of if they were managing him and saving him, this is the time they were saving him for. There's no reason to be doing that anymore. So do you think this is the time that we finally see Diggs play 70% of the snaps?
I actually do like that take, because there's been a few games this year where Diggs is really fired up for whatever reason, and he's on the sideline and he's gassing up his teammates and he's like really, really invested in the game. And those are all his biggest games. So he feels like a guy who just gets up for certain games, and you'd have to figure a playoff game is one that he would get out for. Granted, we've been wrong before, right? Like you think a guy like George Pickens is going to rise to the occasion when Lamb is out, and instead he's moping about being double teamed. So it's kind of hard to know, but you would think that if Diggs want to pull up the New England flex plays so people can kind of see all the options. But yeah, I mean, I would tend to agree that it feels like Diggs is you can just leave May or whatever. Yeah, I mean, there we go. It feels like it feels like Diggs is the guy. Hunter Henry obviously is a really nice red zone pairing because he gets a lot of touchdowns from May. So, but it does feel like if one of the New England guys was going to have a monster game, it feels like it would probably be Diggs. And I agree. I don't think his ownership gets that high. I actually like Diggs okay as a one-off, even if you don't play Drake May. I feel like Diggs is the one there that isn't going to project great because, like you said, they've kind of been saving him. He's had an up and down season. There's a lot of games they've won easily where he's not very engaged. But yeah, I like it. I'm glad you called out Diggs because it does feel like he's a guy who just kind of gets up for some games and just goes nuts.
Is there anything specifically we haven't talked about yet? Because I have one that we haven't talked about yet. I want to make sure we do, but I want to make sure you guys get yours in as well. So is there anything? Well, there's defenses, yeah, but going back to running back, there's something I think big we got to talk about too. Personally,
Go ahead.
I feel that way.
Yeah, go for it.
Even when Josh Jacobs has been healthy and had 20 to 25 carries in a game, he hasn't really buried you much this year. He's had a lot of 22 carries for 90 yards type games and hasn't done much. And I just think on a slate that includes CMC, includes James Cook, and then you drop down to the cheaper plays of Swift and Henderson, who have a higher upside, and Gainwell, who I think has a higher floor than Jacobs even. I just don't know if I can get behind Jacobs at 50% ownership as the highest owned back in GPPs. That's just not some place that I think I really want to go a whole lot. I just don't think he has what it takes to really bury you in that game. I just don't think Green Bay wants to play at the kind of pace where he's going to be getting the touches to bury you as well, too. I think if they're in control, they're going to look to slow it down quite a bit and keep Caleb Williams and those guys off the field. So I'm having a hard time getting there with that kind of ownership.
Yeah, I think the thought here for most people is probably that they probably do want to slow it down, and that involves a lot of running. And they've shown a willingness to give Jacobs more work when he's healthy, and then they've really scaled him back when he's less healthy. And Jacobs says that he feels the best that he's felt in a long time. He just said that. I want to say yesterday. Yeah, this is the best I felt in 6 weeks. I just pulled up that quote. So he was dealing with this knee injury since week 11, and now he says he's really ready to handle his full workload. So I think that's why the ownership's getting so high. I think that quote made its rounds. People look at his game logs and say, okay, when this guy gets over 80% of the snaps, he's been crushing at this price. He's put up multiple games of 29 points. And when he's been scaled back to 50% of snaps, he's been a total bust. So I think the question is just, will they actually push him now that he's feeling better and it's the playoffs? Or has Emmanuel Wilson done enough that, he gets to stay involved? It's hard to say. I think Wilson's actually played really well. And I think Brooks has played pretty well for them too. And his is that right?
Yeah.
Jonathan Brooks.
Marshawn Brooks, right? Now I gotta look.
Now I don't know, but I feel like
Chris Brooks. We're both
who's their third string back?
Chris Brooks.
Oh yeah, Chris Brooks. There's too many Brookses in there. I wanted to say British too. There's a million Brookses. Yeah, I think Chris Brooks has actually played pretty well too. I don't know how much work he's actually going to get, but even if he gets his 20% snaps that he's had, in Pass Pro and stuff, it does take Jacobs off the field. That's a really hard spot to forecast. But I think that the thing that I agree with you on is, if the field is all so confident in him here, then I'd probably rather get off, right? If people were doubting him, I'd be making the case I just made and follow it up with, okay, so lock him in. But because he's going to be so chalky, it's we don't know how this situation plays out. This is a guy who's been playing 50% of snaps over the last 6 weeks. So I'm glad he feels the best he's felt in 6 weeks, but nothing about the last 6 weeks inspires me to eat chalk on this guy. So you're really banking on a major shift in usage, which could certainly happen, but it's being baked into the market already. So I like your stance, JD. I think you want to go against what the market is already baking in such a volatile situation.
I could see him being someone that come game time that I'm you know what? I want to bet him over 18.5 carries, but I don't want him anywhere near my DFS lineups. He feels like he'd be that kind of player to me.
Yeah, I can see that. And yeah, no, I think that's a good call out because The ownership's just too high. When the market's too confident, and Kyren is kind of in the same boat, right? You've got the market telling you Jacobs and Kyren are going to see a huge jump in their workload. And I get why that would be the projection. If I had to put it one way or the other, I'd project for that too. But there is room for this to not go that way. And I think people are forgetting that because we're also used to using projections. People forget that this is just the median outcome, right? Like there's a whole range of negative left tail outcomes where these guys just play 50% of half the work and they're a horrible play as chalk. Whereas like with James Cook and Barkley, yeah, you're paying a little more, but you're getting job security there. You're not worried about the touches for those two.
Yeah, and when talking about median projection too, I feel like Josh Jacobs, his median projection comes from 16 points, 18 points, 17 points, 18 points, 17 points, where someone like Cook is like 7 points, 35 points, 10 points.
Yeah, and it's like, what are we trying to accomplish here? We're trying to have the highest scoring running back on the slate.
Exactly, which is what makes Cook more impressive to me from that standpoint. So yeah, that's kind of my big thing at running back, I think. And also my second one that I'm a little less bullish on, but still feel that way is Gainwell still had some really big games, even when Metcalf plays. In fact, he was kind of better. Well, his first game without DK was really bad. His second one last week wasn't as bad, but not awesome. So I wonder if having DK is actually more helpful for him to have him be kind of take some of that attention away, and he can kind of roam underneath a little bit more and get those big target games. So I'm kind of surprised that Gainwell, as cheap as he is not looking super popular. I think it might just be, like you said, people avoiding that game in general. But he's someone that, I think people are kind of writing off both Pittsburgh and Carolina as just kind of that crappy 4-seed team that no one wants anything to do with. And they're just kind of being treated that way in DFS as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Steelers guys are just, that whole game is just a little under-owned. It just feels like everyone's kind of fading it. And, we often talk about the optimal strategy in DFS, but it's worth mentioning also like having fun. And what's more fun than the Monday Night Hammer?
That's
like
true.
six game slate. Don't you want to have some guys on the Monday night game that can send you to the top of the leaderboard? So if those guys are going to be under-owned, and that's a game that we haven't even talked about that much, and I actually came into the pod thinking I like that game a lot, and yet here we are barely talking about it. That's how the rest of the industry is treating this too. It's kind of just a write-off of like, oh yeah, that's the lowest scoring game of the slate. You can kind of ignore that one. And I don't think you should. I think that like Metcalf and Gainwell are both really interesting at their ownership. And it's funny, if you go back to quarterback,
there we go.
It's interesting that a guy that I think of as having very low upside is CJ Stroud. And I think the market all agrees that he just doesn't have the ceiling to be the quarterback that you roster here out of 12 teams. But like he could be like 2% owned in some contests. Like if you give me 100-person field and ask me to guess Stroud's ownership, I'd probably say 2%. And we've actually seen Houston hit a lot of home runs. They've had multiple 70-yard passing touchdowns this season. They actually draw up some nice deep plays. But then once they get the lead, they just squat on the ball, and their defense is so good that they just haven't been pushed. But I think there's a ceiling for Stroud that we just haven't really seen yet. And we almost saw it. We saw that game against the Chargers. He had 150 yards and 2 touchdowns 5 minutes into the game. And then they just sat on the ball, and he basically never scored another point. But it's definitely possible, right? I mean, he projects for 3.2 point per dollar. He's like the 4th, 5th best QB on the slate point per dollar wise, and he's going to be the lowest owned by far.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed out the explosive plays, because it's not just like he's relying on Collins to make those. Higgins has had a couple of huge ones recently as well. He had about a 75-yarder a couple of weeks ago.
Noel has had some.
Yeah, like they've had some really explosive ones overall. So it's not just one guy they're depending on to do that. So I've kind of felt that way about Stroud too. I'm like, maybe there's a bit more of a ceiling here than we realize, because, maybe he still only throws the ball 25 times, but if 2 of them are for 50-yard touchdowns, like who cares?
Yeah. The one thing that does concern me about Stroud is that before he got injured, he was running the ball a lot. He had over 22 rushing yards in 6 of the first 7 games of the season. And then he came back from injury, and he's yet to rush for more than 10 yards. And he has 3 games where he has 0 yards. So that's the only thing that I think is a little concerning. It's like, is he all the way back? Like, or is he still kind of afraid to run? That's the only thing that's a little makes me nervous.
At 5,200 though, I don't know that I really care because nothing from that game's
no,
going to
I
cost
mean
me a lot.
the
So
explosive passing is what you're really going for there. I totally agree. I just felt like I should point that out because we're
It is a
saying how
concern,
great
for
he's
sure.
playing, but like
Yep.
that is a little concerning that he's
Yeah.
and he's part of that is like he's getting rid of the ball faster. Like those first 6 weeks, he was sacked at least twice in every single game. Last 3 weeks, 0 sacks. So it's like, yeah, he's not running because he's not extending plays, which is what causes you to get rushing yards and get sacked. He's making faster decisions. All in all, bullish on the Texans in general. I really like the way Stroud's played since he came back from injury. That's actually why we bet them 5 weeks ago at 30-1 odds, and they basically just ran the table the rest of the season. I love the way he's playing, but it hasn't really led to any rushing upside. But yeah, there's a ceiling there that we haven't seen.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's true. So,
Gavin, anything else out of you? I know we're going over the hour mark, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight Travis Etienne in this one. He's projected to be like the 6th or 7th highest owned guy. But going against this Bills defense, they have been terrible against the run this year, letting up the fifth most yards at 136 yards. No other playoff team ended in the bottom 10. So I think there's a large upside there, especially for Etienne, a guy who in his last 4 games of the season played 68% of the snaps. I see him having a great potential for a big game this weekend.
Yeah, there's really no one on that Jacksonville offense I don't like. So I totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, and I could see too, like to kind of Gavin's point as well, like Buffalo's actually been pretty decent as a pass defense, and they've been terrible on the ground. Like maybe it's something where they come out and they just say, hey, let's pound it 25 times too. Like that could be something that's an outcome there as well.
And they just got Tootin back, so they might run it a little more. It's possible that, some of the pass heaviness, we're giving all the credit to Lawrence, but maybe not having Tootin healthy impacted that a little bit too.
Yeah, but no, I'm with you that, even though you can make cases for all of them and why the other part of the game, like why the running backs will be high because the passing might not be as much or because they pass a lot more lately, like all of them I love. I can't really say anything bad about a single Jacksonville offensive player right now for this game.
Yeah. I will say, like, one thing that's worth noting about Jacksonville is that LaQuint Allen had been taking on more and more of a role after Tootin got hurt, and even before Tootin got hurt, he had been. But then last week he went back to just being a special teams guy. He did not get a touch, and he just played a couple of snaps on like passing downs, but they barely used him at all. So I kind of think in a playoff game, I wouldn't worry about Etienne with Tootin coming back. I think Tootin just takes all the LaQuint Allen snaps, and Etienne still stays as the workhorse. So Etienne's been so good. I think people discounted how talented he was when everyone was like, oh, don't take him in the top 100 in best ball because Tootin's there. And that was a miss, right? Like Etienne is great. Eddie Martin was all over that. RGP analyst, does a lot with best ball. He was texting me all offseason, like, pretty sure Travis Etienne is really good. And I was like, yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Tootin may be good, but Etienne's great. And so I wouldn't worry at all about his role decreasing. I think some of that ownership being down is people worried about Tootin because there's so many people out there that were so bullish on Tootin. And now that he's back, I could see people getting off Etienne. So the hardest thing about this slate really is like, how many Jacksonville guys can I play?
Yeah,
I think that's the hardest part. The market's not high enough on Jacksonville, and so it makes me want to just play like 5 guys there, and you just can't really do that.
Yeah.
So that's the hardest part.
unless it's going to be like 64-61 or something crazy like that happens. Like otherwise,
It
you're
doesn't
probably
even have
not
to
going
be
to
that
have.
crazy because some of these other games might be duds, right? So it doesn't have to be that insane. But like Jacoby Myers projects as the 5th best point per dollar receiver and 17% owned. Like, yeah, how do you not play these guys? I don't know.
Yeah, I like them a lot too. I think that's a lot of it is kind of figuring out, like you said, like how many of them can I really realistically play? Like it's tough, but that's also kind of why I mentioned too. Like if I were to play 5 or 6 guys from one game, that would definitely be the game that I do it from, and just hope the rest of them are like 20-10, and that one happens to be like 41-38 or something like that.
I could really see myself submitting a Saturday to Monday, the full six game slate lineup. I could definitely see myself with no players on Saturday.
What's the second game on Saturday? Because got Carolina, Rams.
Chicago, Green Bay.
Oh yeah, okay, yep, good too.
You know, like you kind of made me realize Watson's probably overowned compared to all. Like now that we've gone through all these other receivers, I'm like, why would I eat the chalk on Watson? Yeah. Why would I eat the chalk on Jacobs? Who am I going to play on the Bears? I mean, I guess it would be like Burden or anyway. There's obviously guys you could play, but yeah, I could see myself having nobody or maybe just like one Bear. Yeah, we'll see. But all right, let's get to defense.
I don't know that I can advocate for a 30% owned defense on a playoff slate. Even if it is the Rams playing Carolina.
I can't do it because we're higher on Carolina than most people. So, I mean, I don't – that's kind of my rule of thumb is I'm just never going to play chalk that I'm lower on than the public. So, to me, that rules out playing Rams D. And I like Texans D if they're going to be that low owned. But the problem is Rodgers just doesn't give up fantasy points.
He throws the ball in less than a second.
Yeah, and he's so willing to just get rid of it. Yeah. I mean, he clicks right stick so fast, you know? Like, that's a Madden reference to throw away the ball. But, it's like we looked into this a few weeks ago, JD. Rodgers is bottom 5 in the league in sacks taken, and he's bottom 5 in the league in turnover-worthy plays. So whenever these defenses project pretty well against them, I get it because they don't score a lot, but Rodgers just doesn't really give up massive ceiling games. Like, does he ever throw a pick six? I mean, it just doesn't. Like, you might get 7 points here, but it feels like we talked about with Josh Jacobs, it feels like the median score for the Texans is like 6, 7, 7, 8. Yeah. That's not really what I'm looking for. You know, I'm trying to get a defense that just get like Eagles D. I get them being popular because Purdy occasionally has games where he's just awful. And that's the type of upside that I would kind of rather go after. Who are you liking the most at defense?
There's something about these teams that from like a skill standpoint and from like a sound defense standpoint, they're not very good. And they have bad like point per play stats and stuff like that. But for whatever reason, they just turn you over like crazy and you can't really explain
Bears.
And that's been the Bears this year. Yep.
Yeah.
Played against Jordan Love. So I'm kind of like, I kind of really like that 2,500. I kind of like the Bears in that situation where they just seem to get multiple turnovers so often. And, in a 6-game slate, you might not get a defensive touchdown, and maybe having 2 or 3 turnovers actually is the most turnovers somebody has. And that's kind of leads towards having the highest scoring defense. So I kind of lean towards the Bears for that reason.
It's funny you say that because I was going to make the same point that like early in the season, I thought the Bears are getting kind of lucky to force all these turnovers. Mm-hmm. But the more I watch them, I thought, these are created turnovers. Like they're not just gifts. Like they take a lot of risk. Like they go for the punch out instead of the tackle more than any defense.
They know they're not good. Does that make sense? They know they're not good and they have to take risks. I think they know that.
Well, I don't know if they internalize it that way, but I think that they are thinking we're just going to be like turnover minded over everything else. And you definitely see it where it's like they could go low for a tackle, but instead they just come flying in like punching. And that can lead to, broken tackles, and like maybe Jacobs benefits from that but I agree. There's like a lot of upside in playing a team that's just punching at the ball all the time. And their safeties are just taking off on like a quarterback looks and they go. Like they're going, and that can get them beat deep, which again I could see Watson Chalk getting there because of this. But at the same time, like they could pick off Love multiple times if they're going to ball hawk like that. So I agree. I think Love is pretty good at not committing a lot of turnover worthy plays, but he's not infallible. He's kind of middle of the league, so you don't expect. It's not like the worst QBs in the league are on the slate, right? Like
no one to pick on.
There's no Spencer Rattler here to pick on. So you have to pick somebody, and I agree. I think that's the defense to go after. Ironically, of all the quarterbacks on the slate, the highest turnover worthy play percentage is actually Trevor Lawrence, but it's still only 3.9%, which is outside the top 20 in the league. We basically have 12 of the best quarterbacks in terms of avoiding turnovers. We have the 12 of them on the slate, so there's no easy spot to attack.
Yeah, and Lawrence really kind of cleaned it up the last 6 or 7 weeks. Like
exactly,
I love to pick on middle of the year. I was like,
I know we were picking on him all the time, but he's really cleaned it up.
Yeah, he has. So can't really take that strategy that we almost got Baker Mayfield, but didn't quite get there. So
yeah, I know that would have been. I would have loved to fade the Bucs one more time. Yeah. Okay, but yeah, so I filtered for the last 5 weeks. And as we said, Lawrence has improved significantly in terms of turnover-worthy plays. So, you don't really want to target him anymore. The Bills are not projecting well, so that's kind of easy. Gavin, any defense that you want to call out here?
I mean, I think, like you were saying before, it's a lot easier when there's a lot worse of quarterbacks. When all these quarterbacks have made the playoffs, so it makes it a little bit harder. I was looking at Pittsburgh. I just know they get to the quarterback a lot, and in a slate where there's no clear spot on where you should be going with your defense. I think the Texans are a good spot, but I also think it might just be one of those slates where you kind of just have to pick your defense last and kind of figure out what doesn't go against the rest of your slate and just be okay with that.
Yeah, I will say this. So, how we talked about how Stroud isn't taking sacks and he isn't running the ball? Part of that is like he's just making quick and smart decisions. He has only made 2 turnover-worthy plays on his last 150 dropbacks, which is like a 1.3% turnover-worthy play. So not only does he not take any sacks, but he's also not making turnover-worthy plays. So I agree, Pittsburgh is a great pass rush, but it's hard to get any points out of CJ Stroud right now. So I think I'm probably going to pass on that. You could make an argument against every single one of these because of all this. But, JD, can you actually scroll down? There's one that's missing.
Oh, there is. Are they all there?
There they are. The Panthers are going to be so low owned. But guess who actually leads the slate in turnover-worthy play percentage if you take out Lawrence? And if you filter for the last 5 weeks, he really leads the slate. It's Matthew Stafford. You got all these other quarterbacks down the stretch. These other quarterbacks are all at like 1 to 2% turnover-worthy plays. Herbert, Rodgers, May, Stroud, Allen, all around 1%. They've really cleaned it up. Whereas Stafford is all of a sudden jumping into like the top 10 in the league. He's got 7 turnover-worthy plays in his last 5 games. So something to note there. The Panthers are also a pretty aggressive defense. They take a lot of risk as well. They've made some really timely interceptions, and they've had some games where they've gotten multiple picks. They actually got a pick 6 off Stafford in their first matchup that really swung that game. I don't think it's insane to play the Panthers D because, like we've been saying, none of these defenses actually project very well, and they all have a lot of reasons not to play them. So at the stone cold minimum 2,000 salary, I don't hate it.
Yeah, like it's one of those things that I think I would like it a lot more if I was trying to stuff in a bunch of people, but there's not a lot of like high salaries on this slate, which kind of helps too. Fair. So it ends up being a little bit less attractive because of that. But if for whatever reason I find a way to play CMC and Devontae and one of the higher priced running backs or something like that.
If you go like CMC and James Cook, then you might have a use for it. Yeah.
Yeah, then I don't mind doing it at all. Like I don't mind doing that to get those guys in at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you're not going to get a shutout most likely out of any of these defenses. So are the Panthers going to hold them to a score that is helpful for fantasy? No, they're going to get 0 or 1 or -1 from points allowed.
Yeah.
But if they can score a defensive touchdown, then all of a sudden, for really low ownership, they could be optimal. So yeah, it's a tough slate of defense. Usually JD, we're like so confident in a defense, and this is one where the Bears are my favorite, but it does feel like you're just kind of throwing darts.
Yep, there is a lot of that. And, like Gavin pointed out too, like it's the playoffs. There's not like people to pick on. So it makes sense as to why it's a little bit tougher.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we went a little long for a podcast that's about a 6-game slate, but I'm excited for it. I think it's a fun slate. We're going to also, we're going to have a write-up about the main slate, but we'll also kind of address the individual slates. I think people will be able to listen to this and build. The Saturday slate's tough because we don't really love a lot of guys in those 2 games. But we'll help people with that in Discord, and the write-up will help with that.
Yep, for sure. I think it'll be a great one for Discord, especially as we look at like time going on. If you play the main slate, and you're going to have 3 different days that stuff goes on and as games played are one at a time, like there's opportunities for a lot more changes. So definitely talking with each other and kind of having a chance to say, hey, here's what I've got. What would you guys do? Like definitely some good conversations to be had there too.
It's fun when you're sitting on a pretty good team, like going to sleep on Saturday night or Sunday night when you've got a really good team with a couple players left. That's what makes these progressive slates really fun. So hopefully you guys have a good time with this one. Gavin, thank you as always for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'll, hopefully enjoy watching some football all weekend.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you both, and I'll see you guys in Discord.